All right, gang, how you doing? It's Van here again, and we're going to do issue 10 of the Avengers, a story that never actually happened, as it turns out, and you'll see why in just a minute if you don't already know. Now, the reason we're skipping ahead and doing Avengers 10 right now is that a great friend of mine and friend of the show, David Wright, is scheduled to cover 8 and 9 with me. But my schedule has been so chaotic in the evenings for weeks now that I've gotten woefully behind, and I didn't want to just not keep doing shows because I haven't been able to get together with David to do 8 and 9. So David and I are still going to do 8 and 9 as soon as we can, but I'm going to go ahead and do 10, which is really kind of separate and is very focused on the first appearance of Immortus. Okay, now, a couple of things I want to mention about Immortus, then I'm going to switch over and show you the comic. Everything that I've seen in research seemed to indicate that Immortus was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, but Avengers issue number 9, the Wonder Man premiere issue, right, which we'll talk about soon, that one was the first Avengers issue actually drawn by Don Heck and inked by Dick Ayers, of course. And so if issue 9 and 10 were drawn by Don Heck, does that mean that Jack drew Immortus previous to that, and then Heck was using Jack's design? I'm going to assume that that's the case, but there's a little bit of my mind that says maybe people just assume if it was in Avengers 10, it must have been Jack Kirby, and maybe they didn't actually double check and see that in fact Don Heck drew that issue. But he does look like a Kirby creation, and you know, he is related to Kang, who was drawn by Jack. So I'm not 100% sold on it, but we'll go with that he was created by Jack and then drawn for this particular issue by Don Heck. All right, so let us go ahead and go to the comic, and I'll show you why this story never actually took place. It also features some odd decisions by characters. Captain America in particular, in these early appearances, is always making decisions that I question. Now, let me hold up this book and remind you that this is the last issue covered in Marvel Masterworks Volume 1. But we still have the 2 we haven't covered in it, of course. So this is this one down here, the Avengers Break Up. Well, not really. I'm not sure where they got that catchphrase from, but it is the last one covered in that first Marvel Masterworks. But we've got tons of them digitally, and so here we go. Let's. Oh gosh, I've been using a different program all day. Here, yes. Let's share the screen with, and let's make, there we go. You don't want to see me, you want to see the comics, and who could blame you? So there we go. And by the way, that is the biggest I can make the comic. It's filling my other screen, but here, because it's a PDF, that's the viewer that we have. So, all right. So it's a pretty darn cool cover. I like how regal and arrogant Immortus looks there, and I like the giant Avengers Break Up. I like the fact that nobody on this cover is speaking. It's a rare Stan cover where we don't have, we must stop Captain America before he does so and so. Yes, giant man, we must do this immediately. You'll never stop me, fools. You know, something like that. I mean, and I'm really controlling everything behind the scenes. Muhaha. You know, usually we have tons of dialogue all over these covers. That is kind of frustrating since they were so beautiful. But, and you do have a giant explosion balloon and then a giant arrow balloon thing pointing at Immortus. It is truly different villainy, although of the evil Immortus, I'm not so convinced he's evil. I think that let's talk about Immortus for a minute. Okay, this is also the character played in the last episode of Loki on the Disney Plus series. He called He Who Remains or something like that, but it's Immortus, you know. And he's a very, very, very complicated character. I mean, you know, there are some characters in the Marvel universe that pretty much stay the same all the way along, right? They're always pretty much the same. And there are some that basically every writer and or artist that comes along over the years changes them, adds stuff to them, takes things away, or makes them a little different than they found them. And in the case of Immortus, I can't think of many. I'm sure there are some, if I really want to stop and think about it for a minute, but I can't think of many, particularly Marvel villains, that have been changed and had layer upon layer upon layer of changes, retcons, additions. He just, it's like every time a writer comes along, they would basically just add a new aspect to him, a new connection. In this issue, he's really very simple. He's just kind of a time traveling villain who basically, he either auditions to join the Masters of Evil or he auditions them to let them join him. It's never entirely clear. He kind of wants to kill an Avenger, but it's just never entirely clear what his motives are. And because he is so powerful and yet so vague, I think that goes a long way toward explaining why he gets the layers of additional, you know, meaning and history and connections that he does. It also doesn't hurt that he appears only 2 issues after Kang first appears. And so the two of them, and they're both purple and green, you know, I mean, you look at it and you say, maybe this was a different design for Kang. I kind of wonder if maybe Jack designed Kang and designed Immortus at the same time. And I don't know that. I've never read like an in-depth exploration of the actual creation of Kang and Immortus. I'd love to, but I've never read one before. You know, there's what we know now from all the stuff that's been done later on after the fact. But I mean, in terms of going back to 1964 or whatever and knowing what they actually, in fact, let's see when it was. It was, 1964. It was the November of 64 issue. So the middle of November is when this one was done. So I'd love to go back and find out exactly what was going on there. Maybe he looks to me like Stan said, make up Kang the Conqueror. What does he look like? And Jack drew this, and Stan goes, nah, let's make him more like Dr. Doom and less like, you know, a guy in a cape with a hat. And so then he redesigned him as the Kang that we know. I don't know. I'm just kind of pulling all that out of the air. But again, it may end up that it really was Don Heck that designed him and was influenced by Kang. I don't know. But in any case, let's move along. But anyway, his deal is he's a time traveler. Later on, he becomes like a guardian of time, working for the timekeepers or whatever, which you kind of see in the Loki episode. He's been an adversary of the Avengers. He's been kind of an ally in a way of the Avengers. He's not, you know, even though it says the evil Immortus here, it's been pretty well established that he's a less evil, if not evil at all, version of Kang and Ramatut and Nathaniel Richards and on and on and on. So yeah, it gets very confusing. I love Kang. I don't love all the baggage around Kang, and that's just kind of how it is. All right, so the Avengers break up is what it's called, but they really don't. They don't even really come close to breaking up. They have a slight disagreement caused by Immortus trying to stir up disagreement. So at the beginning, we see them fighting, and I think we are to understand that Captain America is breaking up with the Avengers here. But in fact, it is more like the beginning of Star Trek II, where you think there's a fight and people are getting killed or whatever. And in fact, it's just a simulation. And this is, in fact, more hyperbole, the incredible, the inconceivable, the incalculable menace of Immortus, who really doesn't do all that much. Turns out, and by the way, again, you see, Stan Lee and Don Heck. No Jack Kirby this time around. Although maybe he did that cover. I'm not sure. Anyway. Okay, so they're just practicing. They are able to hold off Cap for almost a minute, or he's able to hold them off. And then we get to a meeting, and Thor is the chairman. They were apparently changing chairman every meeting back then, rather than having one permanent chairperson for a while. And I love, again, that when you become chair of the Avengers, you stop talking like whoever you actually are, and you start talking like a bureaucrat. Because Thor should say something like, verily the Odin son hath been bestowed the honor of presiding over yon meeting of the mighty Avengers. What bringeth thou before me, my friends, my comrades, or something? Instead, he says, I ask if there are any matters to be thrown before the board. Stan, you're writing Thor here. you're writing him like he's the junior executive at like Xerox or something. But anyway, and actually, a Giant Man, Hank Pym, has more flowery language. I yield the floor to the Golden Avenger. Our transistor-powered friend seems to have something on his mind. Well, yeah, he does, and it's that. And this is what really kind of puzzles me. One of the things that puzzles me about this issue, and I love these issues. I'm not trying to make fun of them or criticize them. I try to understand them, and I try to work through where Stan and Jack and Don Heck and whoever, where they're going with some things, because they don't always make sense to me. So here, Iron Man's point is, why don't we, his what's on his mind concerns Rick Jones. Why don't we make his membership in the Avengers official, as the Wasp's is, by giving him some sort of uniform? And I'm like, what does that mean? All right, let's break this down a little bit quickly. Why don't we make Rick Jones's membership in the Avengers official? Okay, well, he's not a superhero for one. So why do you want him to be a member? Can't he just hang out with the Avengers and be Captain America's little buddy and hang around the mansion? I mean, why does he have to be an actual member? And why is this a point of contention among the members of the team? I don't understand that. And then number two, as the Wasp is, how are we comparing Rick Jones to the Wasp? I mean, by giving him some sort of uniform. Okay, so giving him a uniform would make him official as the Wasp is. Did we give the Wasp a uniform? I thought she had her own costume or uniform that had nothing to do with the Avengers, that she either made herself, probably, right? Or that in conjunction with Pym. There's just basically nothing about this statement by Iron Man, by Tony, by Iron Man, that I'm understanding here. Maybe he's saying, that the Wasp is kind of Giant Man's sidekick, and so she's an official member, even though she's a sidekick, quote unquote, although I don't think that's how I would describe her. So maybe if Rick Jones is Captain America's sidekick, then we'll make his official too, and then we do it by giving him a uniform. I mean, that's the most charitable way I can interpret that, but it still doesn't make a whole lot of sense, I'm afraid. And then Cap says, objection. This isn't a court, Steve. You don't have to object to the judge. There's no judge. Objection. That decision is for me to make. And I'm like, why? It's a group. Why is it only you that get to make a decision if Rick Jones becomes a member and gets some sort of uniform? Why is it to you? And then someone says, I'm assuming Pym, since it's not Cap and it's not Iron Man, and I don't think Thor would say it. But then again, we've already established Thor says some things in these meetings that don't sound like Thor. So either Pym or Thor says Cap is right. Only he can decide. He can so decide. Now that kind of sounds like Thor, doesn't it? Only he can so decide. But Cap is right doesn't sound like Thor. Anyway, I don't know. I'm not sure what Stan was thinking when he was writing Thor's dialogue when it wasn't in Thor's own book. Okay. So one of them says Cap is right, only he can so decide. And I'm like, why? Why is Cap right? And why can only he decide Rick Jones's fate? Again, if Rick Jones is over 18, which I assume he's a teenager, but surely he's 18. I don't know. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's not. I don't know. And if he's not, who made Cap Rick Jones's adult guardian? I mean, their relationship has been odd to me all along. I don't understand how Rick Jones shows up, and because he kind of basically resembles Bucky, everybody just assumes that he's Cap's sidekick now. And even Cap is like, no, you're not my sidekick. It's too dangerous. And I'm not even sure anybody ever asked Rick, what do you want, Rick? Do you want to be Cap's sidekick? None of this is entirely clear to me, and I don't think they ever really make it clear. This is why I much prefer the Rick Jones from Captain Marvel, both the Doug Munch version with Pat Broderick art in the early 80s, and the Peter David version with the Genesville later on. That Rick Jones is a grown-up. He's intelligent. He does intelligent things. He does dumb things occasionally too, because he's Rick Jones. But there's not this whole sense of, I'm Cap's partner because I kind of vaguely look like this guy that died. It's just odd. And so, don't press me for an answer now, lad. I must have more time to think about it. There's much to consider. That's Cap's way of saying no, it ain't happening, period. And we're done with this conversation. Does it mean there's a chance? Question mark, exclamation point. So Rick really does want to be a member. Again, I don't know why, because why? What is that going to do? He's going to get to go into battle and get himself killed. And that's what Cap's saying. All right. Meanwhile, at the lair of the Masters of Evil, Zemo will never rest until the Avengers are destroyed, and yet they have defeated us every time we fought. So they're all sitting around complaining about how they can't defeat the Avengers, when suddenly a mental signal comes to the Enchantress. And that's important. Remember this, that she gets a mental signal, and he says, break contact. It may be a trap, but she says, I cannot. The mental probe is too strong. So please make a note here, folks, for when we come back to this at the end. And this is Immortus contacting her. When Immortus contacts the Enchantress, she cannot break the contact, even though Zemo tells her to, because it is too strong. Okay. Now, Immortus shows up, and I'm just going to zip through this here quickly. Immortus is like, they already know who he is, by the way. Immortus, the master of time, the one who rules the mystic realm of limbo where things never change. So they know who he is already, even though we don't, because this is his first appearance. And he says, I have observed your futile battles against the Avengers with amusement, and now I shall join you for my own purposes. So he kind of wants to join the Masters of Evil. And of course, for one day I shall claim this century, and I may permit you to serve as my underlings. All right. So in the two panels, Immortus has gone from, I want to join your club because I think it's funny that you fight the Avengers, to, I'm going to dominate this entire century, and maybe I'll let you work for me. And that kind of ticks off Zemo. So he sicks the Executioner on him, and they fight a little bit. And then here's where it gets kind of odd. In this issue, Immortus brings in, fictional or historical characters from the past to fight. And in the case of Paul Bunyan, and I'm not kidding, you and me both, Executioner, Paul Bunyan. I'm glad that the Executioner knows who Paul Bunyan is, though. I'm not quite sure how the Executioner, I guess they both have used an axe in the past, although neither one of them is using an axe here. It would have been, that's one thing I think that Stan missed out on here, or maybe Don Heck when he drew it, is that you could have had an epic axe battle between Paul Bunyan and the Executioner. That would have been cool. But neither one of them has their axe here for whatever reason. And so they kind of fist fight a little bit. And then as they're destroying the castle in the middle of it, Zemo says, "I've seen enough, Immortus. Stop him before he wrecks my castle." So Immortus kind of sends Paul Bunyan back to fiction. And now Zemo says, "Okay, you've proven you're powerful, but now you must prove your loyalty before we accept you as one of us. Your job is to do that, is to destroy one of the Avengers." And Immortus is like, "I accept with glee, because I'm basically here to destroy the Avengers so I can take over this century. And in fact, I'm going to destroy them all." Okay. So what Immortus... just love him sitting there like it's the Tonight Show. I love this, that Rick Jones shows up for this chemical thing or whatever. You can have superpower formula. And it's like he's appearing on the Tonight Show starring Immortus. Da, 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 da. So, and then he has a different throne here. So he's at a desk like the Tonight Show here, and here he's like at a throne. But anyway, Immortus doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, this entire issue, but we'll keep going. All right, so Rick Jones shows up with the Teen Brigade, and they tell him that there's somebody on the back of the issue of these comics. So Immortus must have gone back in time and placed an ad for comic issues that would come out several months later. I guess it was all his master plan all along, right? So like 3 months earlier, or whenever they were going to press, he already knew his plan was to lure in Rick Jones before he ever... So I think Immortus shows up when he does in this issue because he had to wait for this comic book to be published. Okay. That's the only thing that makes sense. Okay. So Rick Jones sees the ad, he rushes in, and apparently the ad was placed only for him. I have this vision of like dozens or hundreds of other teenagers showing up here, and Immortus is like, no, it's no longer for sale. It's not available. No. Immortus has to spend like a day or two just turning away teenagers that want superpowers until finally the right one shows up, and it's Rick. And immediately Immortus sicks Attila the Hun on him. And Rick is like beating Attila the Hun. Okay. And then he gets thrown in the Tower of London, which okay, that's kind of cool that he goes to the Tower of London where like the sons of Edward IV were held, okay. And then also, that doesn't look anything like the Tower of London, Don. That's not even in the ballpark of what the Tower of London looks like. But again, it's whatever. It's fine. So now Captain America is wondering where Rick is. I have to imagine some amount of time has passed, or else why would Cap be wondering that he wasn't like off doing things with the Teen Brigade? I mean, Rick goes to do something with the Teen Brigade. Wouldn't Cap be like, it isn't like Rick to vanish without a word? Well, he's hanging out with the Teen Brigade. You don't know that he's gone off to deal with Immortus. All you know is why is Cap? I guess it has to be much later. Okay. So he immediately thinks the worst. He calls up the Teen Brigade. Last we saw of him, he was all excited about that superpower ad in the magazine. He was rushing over to see the fella personally. So now, Cap's got a copy of it too. And he knows it's a trap. So he busts into Immortus's headquarters, who's now no longer at the Tonight Show. He's now on the throne. And Immortus starts working on Cap. I promised the Avengers I would not harm him. What have they had to do with this? Everything. They told me the best way to control you is through the boy. So Immortus is just using some mind games here. That's fine. You can't make me believe they would betray me. And then he does. Okay, so you're biting off more than you can chew, mister. I'll bring the Avengers back here, I swear it, and we'll get to the bottom of this. All right. So now Cap goes back to the Avengers Mansion and starts attacking the Avengers. He just got through saying, you can't make me believe they would betray me. Then he goes and starts a fight with the Avengers. And they're all fighting, and they're fighting, and they're fighting. Okay. And then Pym stops them. Why don't we just go and see Immortus? Which is what Cap wanted originally, so why did we have this fight? So they go see Immortus. He's back on the throne. The boy means nothing to me. He is merely bait, which you serve to which served to bring you to me. So that's Immortus. He doesn't look like much. Okay, Iron Man. Enough talk. Where is Rick? Before I return the boy, you shall each fight a specially selected foe from the past, one whose power exceeds your own. All right. So Goliath, ironically, because not too long later, Pym will call himself Goliath. Goliath fights Pym. This is actually a pretty cool fight. They do some fist fighting for a while, but then Pym wises up and does the old slingshot trick to knock out Goliath, which ticks off Immortus. So Immortus brings in Merlin. Again, these are not like, I guess these are like public domain characters rather than Marvel characters. So in comes Merlin, and he fights Iron Man, but Iron Man is able to use sonics to knock him out. And then, this is interesting, Immortus brings in Hercules. Now, clearly this is not our Marvel Hercules. He's not around yet, apparently. This is more like mythical Hercules. I'm not sure how they interact. I guess we'll find an issue later where Marvel's Hercules first shows up, and we'll see if Thor goes, hey, it's you from back in issue 10. We had that fight, remember? That was cool. I don't know. But in any case, there's a Hercules, and he and Thor fight a little bit, and Thor ends up like catching him and hanging out the window, and basically Hercules is like, oh no, I'll die if I fall all the way down these 3 stories to the earth, so I surrender. So Immortus gets ticked off. He grabs Cap and takes him away to the tower, where Cap then is fighting. Let's see, did we lose something? Well, Cap's fighting the guards of the Tower of London. Meanwhile, the Masters of Evil are like, hey, without Captain America around, the Avengers are not as strong. Let's attack them now. So they go and they attack the Avengers. And they're doing pretty well for a while. They're doing pretty well. But then, and this is great that we have this pinup here, because that voice, it can only belong to the version in the Marvel Masterworks didn't have the pinup page. So I didn't get that cool when I read it the first time, when I read it, previous to doing this show. I didn't get that effect, but that's pretty cool that we get a Captain America pinup as the answer to Thor's statement here, right? That's pretty funny. And then Captain America. So it's like a pinup, but it's also a continuation of the story. This is the only Marvel pinup I've ever seen, and I've seen quite a few of them over the years. This is the only Marvel pinup I've ever seen that's actually in continuity with the story, right? That's just cool. All right, so Cap shows up, and with Rick with him, whom he's rescued, they fight, and Cap kind of changes the flow of battle and helps everybody else pop loose, and the Avengers win, so the Masters of Evil must once again ignominiously retreat. Now, this is important, all right? We're almost to the end of this issue, and this is kind of important. The Enchantress doesn't just teleport them away. She says, let all be as it was before we met Immortus. Wait, what are you doing? She's providing our escape by taking us back a few days in the past. Okay, so the Enchantress takes the 3 of them back in time so that everything that happened in this issue doesn't happen. Everything that happens in this issue does not happen. That's important for a couple of reasons. One, it means Immortus never actually fought the Avengers that first time, right? So when we see Immortus later, that will actually be the first time he actually met the Avengers and fought them. Okay. But 2, I'm going to go back and refer you to the beginning of the story. I feel this contact mentally coming. Break the contact. It may be a trap, says Zemo. I cannot. It is too strong. All right. So she takes them back to where this thing all started. It sorely grieves me to do it, but I have to admit defeat, but there's no other way. So the Avengers shall never know. So we're back to that meeting. Any new matters to be thrown before the board. And we get the whole decision for me to make thing all over again. Oh, great. But meanwhile, again, you have failed us, Zemo. So they still have a memory, right? They still have a memory of what has happened, even though nobody else does. Silence, you thick-skinned clod. Each time we come closer to victory, do we not? Bah, my patience wears thin. If you cannot bring us total triumph, the executioner shall dispose of you as I would dispose of an ant. You dare threaten me when all of science is at my command? Stop it. We must not fight among ourselves. Okay. So as they squabble amongst themselves, having memory of what happened before, I feel the enchantress says, I feel another mental probe from the past. Of course, everything is as it was. It must be Immortus again. So this isn't Immortus again. This is Immortus for the first time. Break the contact, lovely one. So instead of Zemo this time saying break the contact, and she says, no, it's too strong. Instead, he says break the contact. Presumably the contact is broken. The story ends there. And Zemo says, too bad, we came so close, so close. A pall of silence falls over the strange castle hidden deep in the mysterious Amazon jungles. The Masters of Evil brood and prepare new plans. A totally different menace is about to confront the Avengers. Okay, so no more Immortus. That didn't happen. She's able to break the contact. Why is she able to break the contact this time and she couldn't the first time? I don't know. It's just one of many things that Stan does in stories that drives me nuts because I think he's super innovative for his time. I think his dialogue usually crackles. It has energy to it. It's fun. But honestly, his plotting always makes me go, but wait, yeah. So anyway, all right. Those are my nitpicks. But overall, this is a pretty cool issue because we did get to meet Immortus. And we see that he is different from Kang. He does seem like wanting to conquer things and places and times like Kang, but in a different way. And like Kang, he likes to bring in legendary characters from the past to do it. I'm glad Kang doesn't really do that anymore because that was always kind of dumb. But we're still a long way away from an Immortus that would be recognizably the Immortus that we know now. So, okay. I'm looking at the letters page because again, the letters pages are not reproduced in the Masterworks that I read, and I don't recognize any of these names. But it does go on for 2 pages now. It is all about the Avengers. It's not yet Avengers Assemble. We'll make note when that finally happens. And now get ready for a really special announcement. They hid this really at the very back at the end. Next issue, Avengers 11 will feature, hold your breath, brace yourself. Are you ready? Can you take it? Again, I love Stan the way he does this. Will feature the return of the fascinating Kang, plus none other than Marvel's wondrous web spinner. That's right, you guessed it, the one and only Spider-Man. I remember that issue, and it's kind of. We try to make all our issues great, but this one will be super great. So be on hand for the fireworks when Kang, the Avengers, and Spidey enter each other's lives. See you soon here. All right. So we had a Kang issue number 8, and then Wonder Man, which is a Masters of Evil issue. Then we had a Masters of Evil with Immortus, who is later Kang issue. And then next issue, we get Kang again. So we had that run early on when it was like Namor, the Submariner, and the Hulk, like every issue. And now it's kind of the Masters of Evil and something related to Kang every issue. Okay. Maybe you want to sell Grit. I don't know. I read some interesting stuff about Grit. Maybe I'll do a special episode just on Grit because it's actually interesting. That's the Little League World Series is played in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and that's because it was where the Grit people were. It's really kind of cool, and they were on the board and like a big part of it. All right, so I'm going to see if there's any other authors they were written about. No, oh, Gene Day. Is that the same Gene Day? I'm not sure. He's talking about Marvel Tales Annual, but he mentions, I think that the Avengers is by far your best book. Of issues 1, 6, and 7 take the cake. I might as well get started on my compliments and knocks. Jack is by far the best looking person in the Marvel bullpen. No offense, Stan, but you're rather nice too. All right. So some interesting stuff there. Special announcements. Okay, we did. There's a checklist. There's a special announcement. There's more. Yeah, ever since we decided to put a letters section in each mixed up Marvel mag, we've been seeing special announcements in our sleep, but we'll try to bear it for as long as you can. So here it goes. The MMMS was coming for the Merry Marvel Marching Society, or Mighty Marvel Marching Society. It's coming. Their own club. That'll be pretty cool. And then they say, let's see now. So far in our last 3 issues, you've met Kang, Wonder Man, and Immortus. Would you like to see more of any of them, or should we let them all slowly fade away? As usual, you make the decision. So I guess it worked out that they all made the cut, because we do see lots more of Kang, Wonder Man, and Immortus. And then last, have we told you how proud we are of the team of Don and Dick? That would be Don Heck and Dick Ayers. We always get a big charge out of switching our pencilers and inkers and trying new combinations. This time we think we've come up with a prize-winning format. Stan's script, Don's penciling, and Dick's inking. It's kind of like offering the best of Mickey Mantle, Arnold Palmer, and Pancho Gonzalez in living color. Well, but nothing there about Jack leaving the fold. So it may be, and I missed it, that in issues 8 and 9 they get into it, but maybe not. All right, there we go. It's another episode of All of the Avengers, and I have been your host, Van Allen Plexico. Go to www.avengersassemble.net, avengersassemble.net, and click on the button to join up the family and help support the show. And I promise we'll be back on schedule very soon. David and I will record the issues 8 and 9 as soon as we're able to, very soon. But in the meantime, you got this episode of just little old me finding some interesting things I thought to talk about when it comes to Immortus and the Masters of Evil. All right, you guys take care. Avengers Assemble, and I'll see you guys down the road with more fun from All of the Avengers.